Hey everybody, it's the first of the month, so you know what that means. It's time for the next episode of Thirds on First.
Hello, 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 world. Welcome, welcome. It is Thursday. You are now rocking with the Thirds. This is the Thirds on First podcast. You know us already. I'm 2/3, aka Nicole. I'm joined by my sisters, 1/3, aka Rashida, and 3/3. Oh, right, 1/3. Wait, what did I
I'm
say?
wrong. You're right.
Oh,
She's
I was
right.
like, did I already mess it up?
I heard one and I jumped the gun. My bad.
A 1/3. Sean is my other sister, and we are thrilled as usual to be with you today. You might think it's Saturday, but really it's Thursday. So we are coming to you with episode 4 of season 2. It's kind of hard to believe already that we are into May of 2021. And for today's episode, we're calling it letting go for type A people. And my personal subheading for this is life lessons from 3 perfectionists. I think this pandemic in particular has shown us that it is really, really hard to keep that perfectionist mask on and to really keep up the facade and keep all the balls in the air. And so we just wanted to meditate on that for a little while and give our own stories of how we've dealt with this in our lives and how we have, or maybe we haven't, overcome it. And so I'm going to do a toss up first, which is perfectionism. What is the source of perfectionism and how pervasive do we think perfectionism is? And, you know, that can just be for Black professional women or just folks in general. What do you ladies think?
You going first?
This is like that. This is like, no, one of y'all gotta go.
Well, I'm actually going to take a page from your book, though, 2/3, because I don't know if it was our very first episode, but you mentioned something about perfectionism being safe. And I think that is definitely a part of it. I also was having a conversation earlier this week talking about like childhood and like elementary school and like that feeling you get when you get like the first gold star or you get, and it's different for everyone, but for me it was like, ooh, yay, I like this feeling. And so
the original like click click,
right, exactly, right,
dopamine
like the little dopamine and serotonin went off and it was like, I can get all the stars, like, and I really joked, I was like, I might buy myself some stickers for now. I was good today.
Good, right?
Get a sticker, right? But no, like I think it started that early on. And then I think, as a kid, when, you're being instructed and you're being corrected and, you're also being rewarded in many ways for doing what you're told. And so that can in some ways trigger perfectionism.
I think because it goes to like looking for approval, right? Like all this stuff you just talked about is just like, am I okay? Did I do it right? I'm looking for somebody's approval. I'm looking for people to be happy with me. And so when you're younger, it looks like being obedient, right? Doing all the right things, doing the things that are expected of you. And it's a little easier to grasp because you are like you're being told what to do, and it's like you either do it or you don't. And I know I've had these conversations, I've had like this internal dialogue going in my head where Bear will be like, Mommy, are you proud of me? And like I'm really intent of being like, I'm always proud of you. Are you proud of yourself? Mm-hmm. Right? Because I'm trying to consciously not instill other people's approval into her. Like, are you proud of yourself? Because if you're proud of yourself, that's really all that matters. But that I'm always proud of you. And then when we get to adulthood, I think this is where like, I don't necessarily fully buy into. I believe that imposter syndrome is a thing. I have experienced it. I just like hate kind of naming it, to be honest. And so, but like then we go, well, people expect something of me, but a lot of times what we are putting out there, and we've talked about this, I forget which episode it was, we talked about this in a previous episode of like, is is what I believe in my head, is the story that I'm telling myself in my head, the expectation of other people, or is it the expectation of myself that I am projecting onto other people? And then that's the thing. And I think it's often the latter. And that's the thing that we're always trying to build up to, right? Of like, whatever it is that we think other people expect of us, then we're trying to check those boxes. But it's like an ever moving target because we don't really know. Because as just historically speaking, as human beings and adult human beings, at some point we lose the no filter life that kids have of like saying what they mean, what they need, and what they think. And we filter everything, and we don't really do a good job of communicating our needs, our wants, and our expectations of ourselves and of other people. And so then we just end up in this like weird cycle of torturing ourselves because we're trying to live up to some image that we've made up in our heads.
Well, I think the other thing is 9 times out of 10, not nearly as many people are checking for us as we think are in our head, right? Like, you know, we're like, oh, everyone noticed this, and everyone, like, no, everyone is doing the same thing. They are living their life. And, you know, sure, there are times where people have expectations of us, and people might feel like, you know, we let them down, or we, you know, did an amazing job and they're super proud of us, whether or not that's communicated. But by and large, it's not like everyone was even caring
Right.
what you were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm sitting back and listening to you all, and everything you've both said thus far really resonates with me and makes me think back to my own origin story. And we have a tri-part episode on origin stories that you all should check out. But the source of my own perfectionism being really there was a void. And just like you said, 3/3, my pursuit of perfection was a pursuit of safety. But the other side of the coin of safety is fear and avoidance of, you know, I'm seeking safety because I'm fearful of pain and hurt and rejection. And the notion of the void is you're not hearing anything good or bad. And so, you know, again, and we actually experience that sometimes in our adult lives professionally, right? And I see it amongst the millennial generation. What's up, millennials? There seems to be this need for lots of pats on the head and reassurance and wanting to know, am I okay? And it's funny as a Gen X person, because I'm like, well, did your check clear this week? Because like, you're good. Like, because I'm just not used to always, I didn't grow up getting pats on the head all the time. And I didn't come to recognize that, you know, human nature, we desire and need that. I think there's something interesting here too. I mean, we are speaking from the vantage point of being Black women, but girls in general too. I listened to a TED talk at some point in time about this notion that girls are taught to please, to be people pleasers and to make the safe bet and do the right thing. Whereas boys are taught to take risks and to try something out, and it doesn't matter if you fail. And I definitely have internalized that message throughout my life, that I can't, you know, better to hold back from the pinnacle if I can do here and be perfect, as opposed to going for the bigger job or, you know, throwing my hat in the ring for some award or something like that. This goes also to the research that's been done about women applying for jobs. We won't apply for a job unless we know we have every item on the list of qualities that are desired for the position, whereas men, it's something like 60%, and they're like, yeah, I'm good. So I think what I would, where I have evolved to now in my firmly entrenched in my mid 40s is, and this touches on the imposter syndrome. You're just as good. You've made it this far. You've been doing this work for 20 years and you haven't failed yet. And on the other side of everything you were scared of has been more prosperity, more success. So stop, the big headline I want to leave folks with as we're thinking about this today is like, stop operating out of fear.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. I think in a lot of ways, our work cultures have cultivated that, right? Like, I just go back to your comment about the affirmation thing that you hear from like millennials in the workplace. And I think about when I was in corporate, like we had a performance management system.
Right.
And at the end of the year, you got mid-year and you got end of year were the critical feedback point. But your rating, one was really on a bell curve. So you're rated against not just the work that you did, but your peers. So it creates this competitive thing.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of it, your money was tied to it. So your rating directly correlated to your bonus. It directly correlated to your salary increase. And in some ways, it correlated to your opportunity for growth and advancement within the company, because if you got below a certain rating, you couldn't apply for another job. Wow. And so, like, I remember, not getting feedback. Like, I don't mean good feedback, like feedback from managers at points in my career, and being like, well, how's everything going? Everything's great. Can you give me some more? Like, I need more. And it was less about the affirmation. Like, I knew I was doing a good job at least. And in some places I was like, I knew I was killing it, but it was, y'all messing with my money now. So like, you need to say more than everything's fine. Cause at the end of the day, this is about money. And we create these cultures. And then I think about that stat about what women apply for and men apply for all the time, because as I got more experienced as a manager, if somebody applied for the job and made it, I did the interviews and like they came in, I was never going to hire the person who could do everything that was on the job description. And my reason for that was, I don't know how I would nurture you to help you grow if you can already do everything. And so there's no room for you to grow. If you check all the boxes, like, how are you going to develop? And so I'm not going to hire that person. I'm going to hire the person who doesn't check all the boxes, because then there's room for them to grow and learn and develop in their careers. And so, like, I find myself now sharing that with other women, because it's just another lens and another perspective. If you can come in and kill the job, like, I'm not going to promote you in 6 months, but that's probably what you're going to be looking for, because you're like, I came in and I killed it. And how are you going to develop? There's no room for growth, and there's got to be room for growth. And I think we so often second guess that piece because we think everything has to be perfect, and we forget about the value of leaving space for growth.
Right.
Go, Sean, and then I want to come back to that notion of growth.
Right. No, I was just gonna kind of piggyback off of that. I know the way you described it, 2/3 is sort of like girls being taught to please and boys being taught to take risk. And I've heard it as girls being taught to be perfect and boys being taught to grow. And, and it gets us to the same place. But I think, I have learned in my own experience that to a point, perfectionism can feel comfortable, right? So it keeps us in our comfort zone. But then when you think about like anything that goes through a metamorphosis, like we'll use like a caterpillar to a butterfly for an example. Like there gets a point where like, no, like you're changing and then that comfort zone isn't comfortable anymore. And you've got to grow out of it in order, because one, that's what you're supposed to do. And it's going to be difficult and it's going to be uncomfortable. And, the earlier you can learn to kind of flex those muscles, the better you are, because no one else can do it for you. Like if you don't go through those mechanisms to grow, then you're not prepared for the next level. Mm-hmm. And so like I think having that kind of a growth mindset is really important. And I also think Rashida, and what you were saying, to go to, you're not going to hire the person who's already qualified. I think that can signal to women or to anyone who's waiting to be able to check all the boxes that you're not applying for the right job, right? Like, like, sure, it feels good, but like, no, you're at least supposed to be a level up from that. And I think that kind of, flick of the switch is helpful.
Have you seen that meme that like talks about the butterfly and the caterpillar butterfly thing? And it says, it basically is like, we forget the part. And I don't know if this is biologically accurate. So let's preface this or disclaim that part. But like it talks about before a caterpillar fully becomes a butterfly, it becomes a gooey mess. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And like, we have to remember the gooey mess part and not just go from creepy caterpillar to like beautiful butterfly. Mm-hmm. There's a process, and that process is really messy and really sticky, and that's okay.
Right.
Because it's still an outcome that is where you're trying to go.
Well, the other thing is, and of course we don't necessarily know, but the caterpillar thinks it's dead, right? Like when it's a really mess, right? Like it's just like, oh no, what is
it's
what just happened? All hell broke loose, and then it goes through this, metamorphosis.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I want to pause for a minute on the notion of growth and getting to the next level, because I want to add a little nuance there, both, for our conversation and for our listeners, because I often pause on and think about language like, growth, getting to the next level, change your life, like stuff like that. In other words, I think we should always be growing from the point of view that life is a journey. And if you are not growing, what are you doing? Right. Mm-hmm. In the sense of like, we are here to learn, we are here to love, we are here to evolve as spiritual beings having a human experience. I think sometimes it certainly is the case early in our careers when we talk about getting to the next level, we literally mean getting to the next level. You're progressing, mm-hmm. You're acquiring more skills, you are getting promotions, making more money, etc. But there's also another angle to it that I would toss out for consideration, which is sometimes growth means stepping back.
Yep.
Or making a change, or doing things differently, or even saying, this is good. I don't need another change. I don't need to take on more. I don't need to, it doesn't always have to be bigger, faster, more.
Yeah.
Than now and what I've got. Growth can be saying, this is good.
Yeah. And knowing that, it's funny. I wrote on the white, y'all can't see if it's off camera whiteboard. I was realigning some values this week, and one of my goals is to work a 4-day work week, but I defined it as 20 to 25 hours a week. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, that was like a game changer in my mind, because I realized I'm at this point in my life and in my career where that is not the driver. But I'm also at this point, and I think we can all identify with this. Nicole, you said it earlier, like, we've been doing this stuff for 20 years. Mm-hmm. Everything that we do, we've been doing for 20 something years. And we have in some ways earned the right to do that, because I can actually get as much done in 4 or 5 hours a day that I used to have to take 2 to 3 days to do. Like, that's part of what comes with that process. And we're always thinking about taking on more.
Yeah.
But for what?
Yeah.
Like,
but
and why do you want to take rest? Like, for me, it's because I want to prioritize other things. I want to have my time the way I want it. I want to be able to do things with my kid. I want to be able to do things for myself or with my loved ones. And that is also growth for me, just in a different way. And I think we've got to look at it in that way. Like, if I, was losing my head with my kid, a month ago, and now I can kind of manage that better, that is also growth.
How do you find the, so if we feel like perfectionism is a symptom or a cause of having an outward facing orientation, looking for approval, being motivated externally, how do we move from that to a place of more courage? What would your advice be to folks listening? How do you move from a place that's more authentically you, where you are driven by what your inside, that small voice, call it God, call it intuition, what it's really telling you to do? How do you even tune into that, first of all? Because when you're a perfectionist, I feel like you can shut that voice.
Always on.
Where do you find the courage and how the courage to disappoint?
I will speak from my own experience, and I think for me, it was gradual. I mean, I think I've always heard the voice. I've always relied heavily on my intuition. But I also know that there were times where I heard it and consciously made a decision to do something else. And I think in my own life, I hit a point where normal wasn't working. And this is pre-pandemic, right? Like, I just knew it was not working. This is uncomfortable. I just did not know what the next steps were. And I was not willing to just go out blindly and not know. And so I felt like I've got to have a plan. And so I started taking steps to figure out what might be the plan, so I could feel like it was more of a calculated risk, if you will. But then it hit a point where I think I knew I was searching for something. And so I was, reading materials. I was, watching things on YouTube, and someone was just doing this like meditation about like your highest self. And it was so simple, but it was just close your eyes and just envision your highest self. Like, what does that person look like? What does that person embody? And it was like holding that as long as you could. And once you had a clear picture of it, it was just, now go be that. Like, you know what that feels like. You know what that person wears. You know what that person does. You know what that person wants for lunch. Go do it. Like, and it was clear to me in that moment, like, there was so much stuff that I was doing in my day-to-day life that did not fit that model. And so it's like, well, the only way to get there is to start getting there. Like, you got to take off the stuff that does not fit. And so, and kind of to your point, 2/3 about, life being a journey. I think there's a yogi Sadhguru who does a lot of stuff that like pops up on YouTube regularly. But one of the things he talks about is us viewing life like a race, right? And he's like, well, the only thing at the end of that race is death.
Oh,
and
my
so
goodness.
like,
that ain't a word, right?
Why are you trying to do this as fast as possible?
Oh my.
Right? And
Wow.
and he specifically was talking about it in like about the, epidemic of youth committing suicide. And he was like, we're sending a message that you need to do life as soon as possible. And he was like, and so that is one of the, symptoms that comes out of that, because you check all the boxes, then what is there to do? You're just sitting there doing nothing. And we really do have to shift to this, it is not just checking this box that someone outside of you told you, like, what are you really here to do? And can you, and finding pleasure and enjoying life for the sake of it. And also, like, even in the like good or bad, right? Because, we talked about this last episode, like all things are, working for us. And if we let go a little bit and we, let life happen, if we start to appreciate the journey, I think it looks very different than when we're holding on to it so tightly and saying it can only happen this one way. And, anything else is not perfection. Anything else is unacceptable, because the times, like, I thank God so much for the times things did not go the way I had planned, because most cases they ended up better than I would have imagined. So.
It's like you cannot make a wrong choice. My mother-in-law has a beautiful analogy that she has shared many times, which is that if you can imagine yourself, if you have a drinking straw, right, and you look through life, all you can see is what's at the bottom of that straw. You can only see what's in the bottom, outside the bottom of the straw. God sees everything. You've got this tiny view and you think you're making fully informed decisions based on this tiny piece of the information. But, God sees it all. And maybe we talk a little bit about what's the role of faith and belief in terms of life choices, and how you put one foot in front of the other and how you go on this journey. And Sean, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the double storm that we talked about getting ready for this, but Rashida, maybe a little bit on just faith and what I call you can't make a wrong decision.
Yeah, I think going back, the faith part, I think it requires a quietness and a stillness, right? So when you were like, how do you do it? It's you got to get quiet. You can't hear if you don't shut off the noise. And sometimes the noise is other people and being around other people, but it doesn't require you to go in isolation, to be perfectly honest, right? I like to say God is always speaking. Are we always listening? But to give yourself space to be clear. We've talked in previous episodes and just in general about the time that we've all had at different points in this pandemic, but also before that, to be able to just take a break and be quiet. And that is a gift to be able to do that. But even if you can't necessarily take a break from like your whole real life, where do you carve out that time for stillness and quiet? Like for me, it's the morning. I have to get up before my house starts stirring. And it doesn't have to be much time, but it allows me to simply center. And it's not always me sitting and praying and that kind of thing. Sometimes it's me working out. Sometimes it's just waking up and just being quiet. But it centers the day. I might hear something then, and a lot of times I don't. But then during the day, you get those little nuggets, and sometimes it's stuff as simple as, hey, maybe you shouldn't go that way when you're driving to wherever you're going. Maybe you should go this way today, right? Like we over spiritualize these things and make them so deep, like God's going to send an angel and appear at the foot of your bed. Like, no, I mean, maybe, but no. And so
it's like your gut too. I mean, your gut really, like literally science says your gut tells you.
tells you exactly what to do. The question is like, are you going to listen or are you just going to be like, I don't know? And you have to get to a point where you're just like, I don't really know where this is going, but I'm gonna rock with it. And that comes from practice. That simply comes from putting it into practice. But none of it is feasible if we don't just simply calm down and slow down. And it could be something as simple as don't turn on the TV when you're folding laundry. Don't put on music when you're folding laundry, right? Just like be quiet. Let it be still because we fill spaces with noise.
Oh yeah.
It's just like people are awkward. Like when you're in negotiations and you say like this is it, and you just sit there and you wait for the other party to flinch, right? Because they're uncomfortable with silence. And if you haven't learned to be uncomfortable with silence, we've all seen it happen. Then you're like, well, actually, let me put this offer on the table. And nobody has said anything. They haven't even responded or countered or anything else. But if you learn how to be like, boom, this is it, and you just sit there and you can sit there for 20 minutes, for 30 minutes, for 5 seconds. It doesn't matter. You sit there and be comfortable in the silence. You'd be amazed what comes out of it. And so we have to learn how to let it be quiet and let it be still. And that's when you can hear the voices. And then you have to make a decision. Am I going to go with it or not? It's not a complicated decision. You don't have to be like me. You don't have to go off into the forest and be deep. Just be like,
when you said workout, though, I was like, yo, that Peloton is straight therapy. We'll talk about that on another.
listen, that's a whole other.
I will cry at the end of a Peloton ride. Let me be very clear.
It will change your whole life. But like that's the thing. It's just like Rashida, you should go, don't get on the highway today, go the street way to go downtown. Okay. It's that simple. We just overcomplicate it.
Well, the other thing I think with the stillness is stop multitasking. Like folks who are like, I can't meditate. No, you can't do what you think meditation is supposed to be, right? Like anything can be meditation. Like, and like you're saying, like your Peloton rides, but there are studies on like endurance exercise being therapeutic because it releases, trauma.
Yeah.
But
it's like who said something about Oprah and a massage and waterworks? Like, oh my goodness.
No, but like, like anything you're doing, like, so if I'm going for a walk, I'm trying to be mindful during the walk. If I'm, doing art, I kind of zone out, to everything else around me, but my brain is still processing. I'm still, hearing things and still getting clarity. And so, even, doing yard work, like if you're focused on what you're doing, like, and someone said that like the goal is to let your life be a meditation.
Yeah.
Right. Like that you are so in tune to every single thing that you're doing that you stay in a flow. And, like certain things will distract you, but the more you do that, the easier it is to just kind of bat that stuff away. Yeah. And that kind of leads into the double storm piece, which comes out of worrying. And really worry has no value to us. And, in keeping with the spiritual piece, there is the notion that it takes the same amount of energy to be prayerful or to be, optimistic as it does to worry. So why would you not choose to do the more positive piece, right? That might actually give you some benefit and certainly would leave you in a better mood than, expending that energy on worry. But the other level of that is that, even if you are going through a storm, God, the universe, spirit, only intended for you to go through that storm once. But when you're worrying, you go through it as many times as you worry about. Like our bodies physiologically cannot tell the difference between something happening in our brain and something happening in real life. Like you hear about Olympic athletes who, train sitting there and they're hooked up to the machinery and they run through their race or whatever activity they were going to do. And the same muscles trigger, like your brain is sending the same signals. And that can happen to us with stress, with worry, and, it's just a negative effect.
Mhm.
And, it's just better to kind of let it go, turn it over, do what you can, change what you can control, and the rest, maybe you try to influence, but you just kind of let it rock. So.
I
Yeah.
just think that's such a wise word, because we worry about things in the future and we worry about stuff in the past too. Something bad happens or someone says something to you, and I mean, how long do you live that moment? And it's gone for the other person, but you run it back and you run it back and you run it back and you punish yourself and, oh, I wish I wouldn't have done that. And it's like, you must give yourself grace.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to acknowledge too, in what we're sharing, that like I say, don't be afraid to disappoint. And I really mean that, because what happens if you've lived a life personally and professionally where you are always trying to be the answer? You're there when somebody needs you. You are always the one who picks up the extra projects. You're being your perfectionist self. When you start to shift away from that, you folks are going to you're going to disappoint some people, I guess. Mm-hmm. People are going, and you may hear about it, right? Mm-hmm. And the one thing I wanted to mention and to encourage folks to do is to own that. I work with someone right now who is an incredibly productive attorney. I mean, it's 200 plus hours every month. And I'm just very plain about it and say, I am never going to be as productive as you are. That is not my goal. It is not the way my life is set up. I will do everything that I can within my boundaries to support you and your practice. But I just, you're always going to eat more pie than me. And you make 3 times as much money as I do. Right. And that's, you define that value for yourself. But for me, I'm sorry, but I'm sad that you worked all weekend. I wish you wouldn't have, but I did not. And I am not planning to, and I'm not going to. Mm-hmm. And I think you have to get comfortable with that. And I would encourage folks to not get defensive, because I think what happens is when we try to make choices for ourselves and we try to be intrinsically motivated, and someone is like, you really could have done better on X or Y, Z, then I was dealing with this and I was dealing with that. And I all I will say is it's just very disarming in those situations if you can say, I could have, but, I made a different choice. But I hear your feedback and I thank you, and move on. Right. Move on.
That's boundaries, right? Like, it's creating boundaries. I swear by Boundaries by Cloud and Townsend. Like, it is a game changer book just about setting boundaries and doing that for yourself. But also, like, we are so conditioned. And I really do think this is a thing we do with girls at a young age. And then we continue it as women in particular. We're always explaining. I can't do this because I've got these things going on. And like, when I have to climb meetings, I have to consciously be like, you give people an explanation. Like, I'm not available. I can't make it. Something came up. I don't have to give you all this stuff. And I literally daily I'm like, don't say all the extra, like type, delete. I'm sorry, something came up. I'm not available. It's not complicated, yet it is complicated, because we always feel like we need to explain to somebody why we're asking for something, why we can't do something, why we said yes to this other thing. And like, no is a complete sentence.
Yes.
And so is yes. And like, just let it be what it is and then move on from that. But we get so caught up in that, and we condition ourselves. And it was something I wanted to go back to. Oh, we were talking, Ashante, I think you were talking about rushing through life. Mm-hmm. And it made me think of, like, literally from preschool, what do we ask kids? What do you want to be when you grow up?
What are you going to do next? What are you going to do next? What are you going to do next?
I'm 3. I mean, we all know I said I want to be a refrigerator, so that didn't happen. But why are we asking these questions? Like, what do you want to do the rest of the day? Like, that's a better question to ask. What do you think you might want to do tomorrow? What cool thing would you like to do this weekend? Right? Not what do you want to be when you grow up? Do I want to grow up? No.
Someone had, for adults, instead of asking, even when you're thinking of career changes and whatever, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Instead of asking that question, it's probably more poignant to ask, what type of life do you want?
Yes.
Because then it's not just, because what do you want to be when you grow up makes your work the entire focus. What type of life do you want is much more expansive, and work fits into that.
Yes.
Which
Hello, America.
is much more appropriately situated.
Yeah.
And I think something you said, 2/3, about, kind of knowing your boundaries and everything, like, and really, I think you were talking specifically about like trying to do all the things and trying to be the answer. And this is something from Sheila Battle. And I started doing this as a morning mantra, but like before I get out of bed, I ask, Lord, please show me what is uniquely mine to do and give me the tools I need to do that, and give me the restraint to stay out of what is not mine.
Yeah.
And the wisdom to know the difference. Right?
Is that like the perfectionist prayer?
But her point was, everything is not mine to do. I might be able to do it. I might feel like I need to do it, but it is not all mine. And sometimes when I jump in and I do something that is someone else's, I'm actually blocking their blessing. I'm actually preventing them from growing. I'm stopping their flow. Like, they don't get the muscles they need because I'm the person who has checked all the boxes, right? So, like, I'm the person Rashida's hire for this, like, because I'm not supposed to be doing it. There is someone else who needs to flex that muscle and needs to handle it for themselves. And but then there are things where I'm like, nope, that's me. And so like I do it first thing in the morning, but then throughout the day, sometimes I have to pause and go, you're ready to jump in. Are you supposed to? No.
Okay.
Back it on up.
Good for
that's really mindfulness, right? That's bringing mindfulness to every moment.
Mm-hmm. But sometimes it does disappoint people.
Daily thing.
And you have to be okay with it, because you got to know you feel like it's the right thing for the moment.
And I love that as a daily exercise, because when you program yourself to do it on a daily basis, it actually gives you the framework to make it on, to do it on the bigger decisions, right? Whatever those bigger decisions are, it's the same thing. Is this mine to do something with? Is this where I'm supposed to be playing? Is this where there's opportunity for growth? What am I feeling? Regardless of what it is. It could be something as simple. It could be a job, but it could be something as simple as like volunteering in the PTA. I mean, whatever.
You can't do it all.
Like, everything's not for you. Even I was laughing because they did the Art of Noise. For our listeners, it's a big concert. It's not a big concert series, but it's a whole big party thing that we like to do in Richmond. And it May sold out. They did a June one, socially distanced and safe, and or July. And I was trying to get tickets, and the system crashed, like the site crashed. And I'm still like, refreshing. But in the back of my head, the whole time I'm hitting refresh, it was like, girl, you don't even know if you're going to be here, because I was thinking about going to see my grandparents that weekend. And so it was like, why are you even bothering with this? Like, you probably aren't going to be around. And I hadn't made a decision at that point. And this was me, right? This is how you go for half faith. This is the half faith step. Well, if I don't get the tickets, it's probably a sign.
That's the Santa Claus faith.
Yeah. But I knew from the time I was hitting refresh, like, if you'll just walk away, this is not for you.
Right.
It's not for you.
Right. No, that's so funny. Gosh, this has been like such a really good conversation, and really hope that it's reaching somebody, speaking to somebody. We get the sense that there are some younger women professionals who listen to us. And so, look, reach out to us, give us feedback, ask us questions. Life is a journey, and it's not easy, but you're not here to work yourself to death or to perfect yourself to death. You're here to have a human experience. And so don't miss it. Like Ferris Bueller's Day Off is like one of my favorites, which is really showing my age. But he says, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around every once in a while, you just might miss it. And I think that's really the take home point on all of this is don't miss your life trying to be perfect.
And trying to plan it.
Right. Exactly. Because
that's a level of perfection, right? I'm gonna try to plan it.
Yep.
And then I'm gonna execute the plan perfectly.
Yep.
And it's all good.
And then where are the surprises in that?
Right.
Where's the fun?
My brother loves to say, just let it happen. So just let it happen.
Just let it happen. And like Elsa said, let it go. Let it go. All right. You've been rocking with the thirds. We thank y'all for joining us. We thank you for your support, and we will catch you for the June episode.
Bye, y'all.